guys. Hi there. It's me again, that divination witch. I hope you're doing well. I'm back with another episode of the Keys of Life podcast. And if you're new to the podcast, if you haven't been keeping up, this is all about chatting with people from different backgrounds, walks of life, about their spiritual path and the differences, and basically to show that there's no right answer. Everyone's got their own way of doing things, and that's okay, that's cool. So if you like that, you know what to do. Hit subscribe. I'm joined today by Emily. Hi, Emily. And we're going to be
Hello.
talking about their path. And I will link all their information below, as well as my own. If you want to get a reading from me, I do all of that stuff, and I've got a Patreon. So yeah, check it out. Thanks. All right. Hi, Emily. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Well, you know what this is about to an extent, so I'm going to ask you first then. What would you say your path is at the moment if you had to maybe describe it or label it? What is it?
Absolutely. So I am a traditional Norse animist. I operate kind of under the framework presented by Dr. Rune Rasmussen. He's a really amazing scholar that's reconstructed some really fantastic ways of, thinking and operating in the world in the Northern European hemisphere, all from an animist perspective. So check him out for more of that. I'm a practicing seidkona, so I do traditional Norse trance magic known as seider or save. Um, I serve my community in that role. I perform and hold rituals. I teach classes, and I serve in devotion to my deities.
Oh, very interesting. Very wow, a lot of things. So, well, first then, what would you say is the difference between what you do and say somebody who is, I don't know, on a different sort of Norse paganism path, as in like, I don't know, Aesaru or something like that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Asatru practice is a very reconstructionist, heavy practice that's based in a lot of what we found in like history, especially in Iceland and the sagas that were written there. And it's very focused on, mainly the two pantheons of gods, the Aesir and the Vanir. I work mainly with the Jötnar, so I operate a little bit differently than other people do in that way. I also focus a lot more on reconnection rather than reconstruction. There's definitely some reconstructionism in my practice, and I think that's really important. But I'm also trying to integrate these more like ancient ways of living and interacting with the world in a modern format. Since, I'm not living in Viking Age Scandinavia, I'm living in the United States. So I have to operate a little bit differently than my ancestors might have.
Yeah. It sounds interesting. So how would you describe like what you're doing to reconnect in what sort of way?
Yeah, absolutely. How do I put this? So I do a lot with land connectedness. So I really like to work with the spirits of land in place. And there's definitely a heavier focus on interacting with what we would call the landvetir or the land spirits or land wights in my
Mhm.
tradition. And working and building relationship with the land that I live on. I live on indigenous Abenaki land in the
Mhm.
United States on the East Coast. And so I definitely, as someone living in the US, it's really important for me to understand the history of the land that I live on, because I'm not from here. My family's from Ireland and Normandy, and the Netherlands, from all over.
Yeah.
But so there's a lot of land connectedness. There's also less of a focus on, rebuilding exactly from what we know from
Yeah.
history. There's very little on Viking Age, religious and spiritual magic practice. We do have a good amount of information, but I don't operate solely based on that framework. I definitely incorporate, more modern things. I use tarot cards. They weren't reading tarot cards in the Viking Age, they didn't exist yet. I also read runes, which is actually a modern practice and not necessarily a confirmed ancient one. There's very little evidence that runes were a historic divination system, but they're my personal favorite, so that's what I use. I also use things like a ritual drum. They didn't use drums in the Viking Age. We haven't found any. Just things like that, and kind of, interacting with, tools and ways of thinking that might not necessarily have been there, but synthesizing that with what we know from history.
Yeah. So it's sort of well, it's making your own way, isn't it? And that's what this is all about as well, to talk about your own way of doing things. Because there you go. For me, interested in what you do because, sorry, my ancestry is mainly Danish, and I have some ties with the Norse pantheon, although Hecate is my main goddess. Frigg is my matron, and I've worked with Loki and Hel before. So, I have some interest in it, and it's the way you approach things seems very different to perhaps what the run of the mill is. But that doesn't mean anything really. It means it's what's personal to you. Uh, so that's cool. That's interesting. And you saying that as well about the tarot cards. I mean, that divination, which I'm always using tarot, and I think, well, even Hecate would be like, yeah, we didn't use those back in the day. It's funny, really. Uh, so with, with that being the case, I know you said you mainly work with the Jötunn, so don't know if you can explain, especially for any newbies, like who they are. Uh,
Absolutely, I'd love to. So the Jötnar are a group of divinities in the Norse tradition. I don't necessarily call them gods. They're more, the closest parallel I can think of would be the Titans in Greek mythology, though they operate very differently. The Jötnar were the first beings. The very first being in existence was a Jötun, and that Jötun's body was used to construct the earth that we live on, according to the myths. And so the Jötnar, in my thinking and in my understanding, are the primordial spirits of nature, balance, and the cosmos. While the Aesir and Vanir concern themselves with human matters like war, law, poetry, agriculture, things like that, the Jötnar are centered on nature and making sure that the natural cycles, continue and keep functioning.
yeah,
So at times they might seem to be at odds with the other divinities because, maybe there is a Jotun of the mountains who's causing earthquakes and that's causing problems for humans. So Thor is going to come in here and be like, hey, can't do that. But the Jotnar in the myths are often interpreted as beings of evil and have been misinterpreted as, the equivalent to Christian demons that we would see in the Bible, when
yeah,
it's not really the case at all. They're much more neutrally aligned, but there are some that, in my experience, many of them make really wonderful divinities and energies to connect with.
yeah. That's the thing I've noticed with Norse mythologies. Well, the information we have is Christianized, isn't it? And I know Loki is made, for example, to be like the devil, isn't he? And I know he's not, and a lot of people know he's not. But an outsider might think, "Oh, that's scary." Uh, but it's funny you've said about the Titans because me, obviously, as a Hecatean, and for many years I've worked with her and I'm just getting to know her even more on a deeper level. And I see her as a big part of the divine feminine, that she could go by many names, to be honest. And obviously, there's going to be differences depending on the culture, etc. But there's so many synchronicities. And one I feel, this is just my UPG, could be a synchronicity with is Angrboda. And I know you have do you work with her? I don't know if you want to talk about her because
Yeah,
that was I was so
absolutely.
excited to talk about her, to be
I'd love
honest.
to talk about her. So, for anyone, oh goodness, for anyone that doesn't know, Angrboda is a Jotun. She is described as the mistress of Jarnvedr, or the Ironwood, which is this primordial forest between our world and the world of the Jötnar, Jötunheim. And she is the mother of the world serpent Jormungandr, the goddess of the underworld, Hel or Hela, and the cosmic wolf Fenrir. And in my experience, so there's very little written about Angrboda in the texts, but in my experience, she's very similar to Hecate in that she has this kind of triplicate aspect to her, in that she kind of embodies many different aspects of the divine feminine, but she's very much this primordial dark mother goddess energy. And she's everything to me. She's the deity that I work most closely with. I've been working with her for a few years now. I've been practicing since I was like 15, and so I'm 22 now. It's been Angrboda came later in my journey, but she was worth the wait.
Oh, I can totally feel her energy around you. Like I could from the start. And like, is she on your necklace?
Yes, so this
Yeah.
is her right here. I got this from Valhir. It's a Estonian brand that makes these
Oh, nice.
beautiful amulets. And he came out with an Angrboda one only because I kept bugging him in the comments.
Sorry, I had a cough.
No
Yeah.
problem. I kept being like, "Hey, will you make Angrboda? Will you please make her?" And so when he initially came out with it, he was like, "I made this so that Emily would stop bothering me, like in like a fun, joking way." But I bought it immediately,
Mhm.
and I never take it off.
Oh, I love it. I'll have to have a look at whoever this. I've never heard of them.
I'll send you the link.
Yeah, I've got, well, obviously my Hecate here.
I love that
Yeah,
so much.
I feel that with you. Yeah, that's why I was like, oh, I'm excited to hear more about her. In my personal journey, I've once encountered I just say Angrboda because I'm no good at
It's
trying to
totally
pronounce
fine.
names.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I've encountered her once, and she actually helped me with a spell many years ago. Once that I did, was kind of like a justice working, and I feel like she's very fierce, just in my experience, and very like, if someone's been wronged, and it's especially someone who's had their power taken away, she's like, hell no. That's what I
absolutely.
felt. Yeah. Do you have any place like resources on Angrboda or
Yeah,
places you say to go?
absolutely. So I actually have a couple blogs. I have it on Tumblr and I have it on Instagram, and I share a lot of my academic research on Angrboda. I'm going to be adding a lot more since so I have my own business, so I do a lot of like markets and events, and market
Yeah.
season is winding down for me right now. So I'm going to be posting a lot more, sharing some links. I'm also hoping to offer online classes on her, and I just always like I can't honestly recommend many resources on the Jotnar, just because one of the main resources out there, Raven Caldera, he is a Northern traditions pagan, and he has posted a lot about the Jotnar, but a lot
Mm.
of it is UPG, and as I
Yeah.
understand it, Caldera is not a very good person. There's a lot of, stuff out there about him, and I can't speak on that because I don't know him personally. But the only resources that I can really recommend are like reading the Poetic and Prose Eddas, really reading those, really sitting in that, and then my pages, just because I have like all the archaeology sources cited, like all the texts, like I try to keep all the information there so people can really just take it and interpret it as they'd like. You don't have to
Yeah.
interpret it as I do, but I kind of like to present how I see things and give it to people so they can interpret it in their own right.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, for anyone listening who might be interested in that as well, I'll check it out too. I did have a look through a little glancy glance, but I'll have another look through and yeah, go check out Emily's stuff. Uh, for me, I think sometimes with deity work, just in general, some deities there isn't enough information about. A lot of things have been lost to time, so it is difficult. So it is nice to hear UPG, but to an extent, always cross-reference, like what you've said. I recommend that as well. Yeah, don't just take one person's word for it, not even mine, even though it's
Exactly.
mine. Exactly, yeah. But no, that's interesting. So do you work with any other deities?
Yeah.
Yeah. So who do
So I have a devotional relationship with Freya, and I've been working with her for 4 years now. Um, I have a tattoo on my forearm for her that symbolizes like a lifelong connection, and I maintain her altar. I also work occasionally with Odin, though that's kind of more on a he pops in sometimes basis, and we have a chat, or he's just throws a little random, like cryptic piece of wisdom at me, and then I have to figure it out. But I also hold relationship with Jormungandr, the world serpent,
Oh, yeah.
Angrboda's child. I have a really close relationship with them. I wear an Ouroboros necklace. You can't really see it, but I have it. I connect with a lot of different Jötnar, honestly. Like that's kind of mainly where my work is. I've been connecting with the spirits of Muspelheim, the primordial fire world. I have, connections with Ran and Aegir, the Jötunn and goddess of the sea. Um, Kari and Halogi are Aegir's brothers who embody the wind and the fire, respectively. And so I really enjoy them as well. I like to connect with like the primordial elements and just really all of the different forces that make our world go round is
Yeah.
that's where my heart lies really.
Yeah. So would you say like that? I'm trying to like understand, I guess, what your belief is in. So I know you obviously venerate the Jotun, I just say Jotun, but it's the primordial forces, really, isn't it? That's what sets it apart. It is, that's the name for them, sort of thing. But it is respecting that, isn't
Yeah, it's the primordial forces and for a little bit of context, I grew up on a farm on a really lovely like 35-acre plot of like wooded land. So I was always around nature and the earth. And I grew up in an area where I was close to the ocean and close to the mountains. So I was always surrounded by nature, all kinds of different like wildlife and just so many magical natural experiences. And I'm really grateful I got to partake in. And that really gave me a reverence for nature, not just as something beautiful, but as a very, complex series of cycles, not only on a physical level, but also on a spiritual level and how like everything has a spirit and all of these spirits are interacting together to keep balance and to maintain the natural world. And the Jotnar are like these big, like primal, like really intense energies. And that's really what their, purpose is as a divinity, is that they embody these forces and they maintain them and they keep things working. And that's kind of where the line between, like a god and a primordial is for me, is that
it? Hmm.
the primordials really have to do with, nature and things that are entirely outside of human control. Well, the gods, at least in the Norse sphere, I can't really speak to any other traditions, but the Norse deities are very much having to do with human affairs.
Yeah.
And that's really why I like the Jotnar, is because I can just kind of, enjoy their energy and their space. And it's all very much like natural. It's not necessarily grounded and earthy, like it can be very intense, but that's also something that I really love about it. I really enjoy that intensity and that strength. And that especially comes through with Angrboda as like the mother of wolves and like this primordial like animal nature forest spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it sounds interesting. I mean, to my knowledge, most world religions, I mean, I'm no authority to speak on it, but just my opinion, it is kind of the same across the board that there's like it's names to understand these primordial forces, these elements of nature, and then the next generation of gods sort of thing are more human affairs. Like you've got Helios, god of the sun, and then Apollo, for example. That's just off because he's behind me. I was thinking of him, but yeah. No, I get it. Cool. So when did you first start practicing in general? Like, have you always done that?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Christian church. I went to a Christian school from preschool to eighth grade. So I was very engrossed in the church, but I never really connected with the Christian God. It just wasn't for me. I started practicing when I left. I transferred out to a public school for high school. And that's kind of when I first started practicing. We had a family friend that was like a longtime witch and astrologer, and she introduced my little teenage self to that, and I was like, that's an option? So
Yeah,
I started doing that my freshman year of high school. So when I was, I think I must have been like 13, 14. So it's been about 7 or 8 years now that I've been practicing.
yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah, really, it must have been difficult. I mean, I'm not here to bash religions, obviously, but it must have been difficult if you were raised a certain way and like I breaking the mold, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, so it actually, funny enough, it really wasn't. So
No?
my older sister at that point had been exploring spirituality, and then my parents kind of followed suit, and we all kind of ended up
Mm.
doing our own thing, and none of us are Christian now. I mean, I'm certainly, I'm the one that's got my room is full of like taxidermy and bones and dead things, and I'm always talking to ghosts. But my family is very connected to nature and spirituality. Like my mom's always out in her garden talking to the plants. She taught me how to care for plants in a very, magical, intuitive way. My dad is incredibly spiritual. My sister is an herbalist, and she also connects with and works with Freya. Um, it was a really easy transition for me, and I know that
Mhm.
that's not what everyone gets.
No.
So I'm really grateful for, the experience that I got to have in being
Yeah.
able to share my spirituality with my family.
Yeah. No, that's it sounds a bit like a dream, but in the kindest possible way it does. I mean, I'm a lot older than you. I feel ancient. I'm 35. And yeah, I mean, even my family, you know, I said what I said because normally, I mean, this is me being a generalization, but Christianity in the States is more strict than over here. On the whole, I mean, you're going to get strict people everywhere. You get what I mean? So I just assumed, but there you go. Don't ever assume. That's good that you get to share that. Like, no pun intended, sounds magic. Yeah. So, okay. So was Freya the first like deity you worked with, first introduction into magic, or
So not actually. So the first deity that I ever really, really worked with was Cernunnos from the
oh
Celtic
yeah.
Gaulish pantheon. Um, he is definitely like the god of my ancestors, and that a lot of my family is from, Gaulish tribes ancestrally. Um, so I connected with him. I tried connecting with the Morrigan before that, but she abundantly was like, mm-mm, no girl. And I respected that. I was like, okay. She's very intense. I have a lot of friends that are Morrigan devotees.
Oh yeah.
So Cernunnos, she's a lot, but I love her. Cernunnos, and then funnily enough, Amphitrite from the Greek pantheon. I very much
Oh.
followed an eclectic path when I was younger,
Yeah.
because I was just kind of feeling everything out, really seeing what felt right for me. And Cernunnos and Amphitrite were great. Amphitrite eventually left, she stepped back, and then eventually Freya came through, kind of guns blazing, very intense. I'm talking seeing swarms of like 40 vultures in the sky, getting all these like birds of prey signs about like amber and all the big Freya things. And, once she really came through, Cernunnos was like, okay, this is who you're supposed to be with. I gotta go.
Mhm.
And that was honestly really sad for me because he was like very much like a like paternal, like very comforting presence for me. And I have a lot of love for him still. I keep a statue on my the altar in my home above my fireplace, but he's never really around. I sometimes will see like a deer and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
but it's more of like an old friends kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. My And like I've noticed that with him, he's that primordial, he's that ancient, he is the wild. He's just he does seem to like step out or he just exists. If you ever needed him, he'd be there.
He
But
would, yeah.
yeah. Uh and Freya, from my experience as well, I've worked with Freya a little bit when I was younger, and she's one of my ancestral goddesses too. And if you are just I don't know what you think about this, but if you are gonna work with her, she's very much like you say, guns blazing. Yep, you're one of mine, and you're gonna listen to me. And she really will take you under her wing, and like you put through your paces, and you must listen to her. That's
Yeah,
normally,
she was definitely like very intense, but like in a very exciting way.
yeah.
She put me on the path to learning, traditional save and gave me, the resources that I needed to actually like properly like train and study and research. 'Cause it's not an easy practice to get into. And she eventually stepped back once Angrboda came through, who was even more guns blazing than Freya was. Um, but now I kind of work with them both in tandem. It's very much, Angrboda is like my main deity, like she would be considered like my patron. But
Mhm,
Freya and I have, been connected for so long, and we have that like very devotional relationship. And
mhm.
so I still maintain a very large altar to Freya. It takes up like a whole window space. I've got prints and I've got feathers and skulls and bones and hunks of amber, and it's very luxurious for her.
Mm. Oh,
It's how she
she'll
likes
love
it.
that. I love Frey so much.
Me too.
Uh, yeah, even though I don't actively work with her anymore, she still pops in. Like for me, always gives me ladybirds, and I even got a
Oh,
little ladybird pumpkin thing tattooed for her. I always get ladybirds off her. Yeah, but
love that.
I'm just curious, because for me, I get a lot of newbies on my YouTube, and I help as best as I can. And I know when it was about I first proper opened up again around 2018. Uh, and you do get to a point when it's all new and exciting, especially deity work. You're like, okay, I'm researching my ancestors, oh, past lives, oh, this one, that one. And I've noticed if you accept, say, I don't know, I had Norse deities in like Frigg, I had experiences with Odin and Balder and other people, like they bring people in to help, sort of thing. And the same with Hellenic deities. And I had some Shinto deities as well. And I was just getting so overwhelmed. I don't know, did that kind of thing happen to you when you were like, you just have this excitement and you're like, okay, all these possibilities. And then you've got like a house full sort of thing in
Yeah,
spirit.
absolutely. So when I first started practicing, I was definitely messing around. I could have been a little bit safer and a little bit more like grounded, but I was like, oh my God, like the world is my oyster was very much the vibe. So like Thor was around. He still is. I love Thor. Skathi, who I also still maintain relationship with. Um, there was a bunch of different divinities. Like I've interacted with Anubis and Apollo and Aphrodite and Venus and all of these different deities. But I always found myself like really coming back to the Norse and especially those more primordial powers. And I definitely have a house full of spirits now. I so I collect a lot of animal remains. I work with animal remains very heavily in my practice and
Mhm.
as an artist. I make like bone jewelry and things like that. And so I have amassed quite literally like a pack of animals.
Oh,
Like I've got pelts and skulls and bones and all kinds of different things. And I like to connect and work with those spirits in like a very much like kind of like conjuring, necromantic fashion. I bring them in if they so wish, and then I build relationship with them. So I've
yeah.
definitely got more spirits in my life than I ever did before. Plus, I've got like my guides and my ancestors and familiars. And so there's at least now there's a lot of spirits in this house.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. I've worked with animals before. not so much well, apart from I'm careful what I share. I've got my own familiar, my own who is my pet as well, but is alive, and I don't share him because there's wicked witches out there. Let's just say that, you know. But I do work with the fox spirit, and I do feel like that's ancestral, and it's linked with Loki as well, who's he won't go sort of thing. Yeah, he's funny. I love him, but yeah, I understand that. But for me, Mm, the reason I didn't is because the fox spirit I was working with, she wanted to move on. I don't know if you've encountered that before, and it just made me feel so bloody sad. I was like, I'm sorry. You know, what do you do? Like the majority of the animal spirits you've got around you, like, do the majority want to stay? Does some want to move on? Just because I had that experience, I wonder, oh,
Yeah, absolutely. So the spirits that I have that work with me, and that I hold relationship with are comfortable kind of, existing here. I believe that they're, very healed spirits, so they're able to come and go as they please. But I know that I have a couple that like are pretty much always around. Um, which I'm very grateful for. But I have also, come into, ownership or possession of remains, and the spirits attached were like, I don't like either they were like, I don't want to be made into anything, I don't want to be worked with, I want
yeah,
to rest. And so when that happens, I usually will just bury them and return them to the earth if that's safe. Like obviously, you might not want to bury like an animal hide just because of the chemicals it's been treated with. That wouldn't be good. But like bones and things like that, I like to return to the earth and just let them rest because, sometimes spirits don't want to work with you and sometimes they do and then sometimes they want to move on. And I've
hmm
had spirits like that have, come around and they've hung out and they're like, okay, it's time for me to go now. And that is pretty sad. Um, it definitely, can be hard, especially if you've grown attached to them. But there's also something I think a little bit exciting about it because it means that, they've taught you the lesson that you needed to learn. And then that means you get to meet, new spirits and make new connections.
yeah.
And there's something really exciting in, the concept of connection and just really meeting, new beings and, learning about the world from another's perspective.
hmm I think as well, it's like for those spirits willing who want to stay, you're giving them another chance at something else, another opportunity for both of you. Uh, but what happened with me, I had built a relationship with a particular fox spirit, and I used to do a lot of bone casting sort of thing, and the readings stopped being accurate, and they were like, no, I don't want to do this. I want to move on. So yeah, I help them move on. Hecate help me help them as well. But yeah, sometimes that happens, and I just wanted to ask about it, especially it seems to be a trend. I'm not saying obviously that's not you, but a lot of people just buy bones off the internet or whatever and just kind of force it, and because it became trendy, didn't it, to do that for a while. So yeah, interesting. So, do you have a favorite part of your practice? So, I've been asking people this one because for me, obviously, it's divination. Uh, but is there a favorite thing you like to do?
I think it has to be spirit work. I I've always been very, connected and in tune with the spirit world, growing up in the woods. I was always like seeing stuff out in the woods and I'm like, oh, what's that? Like I'm
Really?
like a little 5-year-old like walking around. I'm like, but, the point where I'm at in my practice, I am always very connected to the spirit world. I like to describe it as I'm very much sitting on the fence between, the mundane and the straight up spirit world. I'm always, hearing things, receiving messages, and willingly. It's not that I can't turn it off, it's just that I don't choose to. I've grown very comfortable with, really existing in that liminal space. And it's really enriching because I've got all these wonderful, human relationships with other people and making all these connections with other practitioners, but that's also true with the spirits I'm interacting with. It's so fascinating and interesting, building these relationships with spirit.
Yeah.
Like I especially collect wolf remains that are ethically sourced here in the US. Um, and so I have a number of wolf spirits, and I've got like this little pack relationship. And I come home and I say hello to them. We work together. They help me in spells and rituals. They're very, very powerful protectors as well. They keep me company, sometimes if I'm stressed out, like say I'm walking home after work and maybe it's a little bit dark out and I'm feeling a little like I'll call in one of the wolf spirits and they'll walk me home, and it's very lovely, and it's just a very magical part of my practice, and it's something that I do pretty much every day now, but it's still definitely like really exciting when I'm like, oh, something's here, someone's here, like something's happening. It's just being that connected is something that I'm really grateful that I was given that gift. It used to be very overwhelming and difficult, but now it's just it just feels like the very essence of who I am as a person is very much being in that little like middle zone, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. No, it does, because I feel like you've described me, but different. That's what I mean about the similarities with Angrboda and Hecate, and like, just I'm the same, except it's maybe more people, more people spirits, peoply spirits. For me, that's one thing I struggle with sometimes, especially the more open I become. I live in a city and I feel a bit disconnected, but there's still little spirits about that are non-human in the city, it's about finding that you can still feel connected, but it's a struggle sometimes. But I absolutely understand about being in the liminal all the time because I do the same. And it sounds like you as well do the same sort of thing as me, helping people, teaching people, bringing people to where they need to be and stuff like that. So, yeah, amazing. Do you have any advice you would give to someone brand new at this? Anything you would say?
I would say take your time and really trust your gut. Um, Intuition is such a powerful tool, and it's something that's built into us, not only as, as humans and animals, but also as spiritual beings, that we have this, very intuitive nature. Something that my dad says a lot is that we are, spiritual beings having a human experience. And so being able to take time to feel out your spiritual gifts and really connect with them. And I say this as someone that was very messy when I first started practicing.
Yeah.
Like I was doing Ouija boards in my basement and all of that stuff and like trying to summon things because I was like, oh, let's see what happens. And I'm better for it because I really learned about, spiritual etiquette is like a huge thing. Um, but really take your time and find, you know, trustworthy, resources and mentors. I know that I would not be where I was if it wasn't for, really like meeting with like my elders in the community and connecting with them and learning from their experiences. Like it doesn't even have to be a formal mentorship necessarily, but it's about connecting with people and really building community. Like that is our greatest resource as magic practitioners is learning from other people. I mean, books and, academia are incredibly helpful, but those can only bring you so far. So I
Mhm.
would say my top three things are take your time, trust your gut, feel out your gifts, and build, trustworthy, safe, magical community because that'll get you so, so far. And I'm
Yeah.
so grateful for my community, the people that I've studied with, the people who I've, shared experiences and held ritual with. I would not be the practitioner I am today without those people. I would not be able to do the work that I do for my community without
Yeah.
what those people did for me.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think as well, like help each other, you know. Uh, Sometimes I've came across people who, I don't know, they let the ego take over, and it's especially on the left-hand path. Someone who's been on the podcast before called it a dick swinging context, and it really is, as in, yeah, I'm bigger than you, I'm better than you. That's not real to me. That's just my opinion. Help each other out. Everyone's got something to bring to the table. Everyone's got different life experiences, haven't they? And doesn't matter how long you've been practicing in that regard. You could just start at 30 or whatever. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Help each other. And
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, thank you. I don't know, is there anything else you would like to say while you're here, or anything?
Just thank you so much for having me and giving me this space to like share and talk about my practice. It's really exciting.
Oh, no problem. It's been a pleasure. I know I just get a bit awkward. I'm like, oh, what else to say?
Oh, no problem.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for being here and listening. And if you want to check out more of Emily's work, it's all linked below. If you made it this far, you know what to do. Hit subscribe. And until next time, stay safe, stay witchy. Bye.